Hello, 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 beautiful people. We are back with another live with Leah Murphy, and we're here at the Career Jumps for the Journey headquarters doing the things. We're back in our regular location, so welcome back. For any of us who were here 2 weeks ago, because we took last week off. 2 weeks ago, I was in a different location, and I was in transit. But the thing that I didn't share on that live was I was in transit because I was helping to support someone that I love very much. My mother had gotten surgery, and I was in transit and helping to take care of her and very much navigating my sandwich generation experience where I am a caregiver, or I have a role to play in the caregiver and the well-being of my parents, as well as raising young people, children in my household. So I don't just speak about being in the sandwich generation. I am living that experience, and part of being away last week and then in a different location 2 weeks ago was because we just had lots of things going on. And I feel very fortunate. I'm grateful for it because my mother is amazing. She's a wonderful human being. She's been nothing but a blessing and a foundation for me and for my children. And when she needed my help and she needed me to support her, I counted it actually a blessing that I was fortunate enough to have the capacity and the physical health to be able to do it. So she got a knee replacement surgery, and she's gonna completely be so frustrated that I'm telling you all this, but I'm telling you this because we are all navigating a lived experience offline that is more important to our life online. And I'm sure there's some influencers or some people who are social media experts that would say otherwise, but I'm here to tell you that that's my reality, that my life offline is more important to me than my life online. In different seasons, it ebbs and flows. But that was one of the things that was holding my attention and that needed more of my attention in this window of time. So I'm grateful that I was able to do it. I'm grateful that her recovery is going well. I am grateful to be back here with you. So many things to be grateful for. And I'm going to just give a disclaimer. It is absolutely a challenge, and it is wild for me at this moment to try to act like the world is not in a crazy place and that things are normal, right? I don't think we can act that way, but I certainly think that this stage of my navigating the world as a parent, as a friend, as a mother, as a daughter, as a wife, as all of the things requires a level of compartmentalization right now that is like top tier, like the highest level of compartmentalization I've ever seen, because there's so many things that are happening in the world. Some of us, may see it as stressful, as burdensome, as overwhelming. Some of us may see it as like, this is just what happens. The world is a big place. Things happen. Ultimately, I'm going to tell you that compartmentalization is something that I am heavily leaning on right now, but I know that there is a limit to it, right? There's a limit to being able to not fully experience all the parts of myself and to give myself the space to be able to do it. So I want to encourage you to do what's good for you in this season. I'm going to absolutely do what's good for me in this season. And we're in this series together. So I'm going to ride this series out with you. I want us to be able to have this experience. And maybe this is a little bit of a break from a news cycle and from social media and from other platforms that might be causing angst and frustration. I want to make sure that we're here and we spend this time together and it feels like a value creation, a good use of your time. And it also feels like a place where you understand that there's a human on the other side, right? And we're two humans, real people, absolutely real people who are communicating and connecting to one another. So if you're with me live, I would love to hear from you. I would love to know what other human I'm sharing this space with. So drop your city in the chat. Drop your city in the chat, whether you're watching this live or on the replay. We'd love to know where people are joining us from. We are consistently doing work to improve this process, specifically for those of us who join us live. And if you are joining or listening on the replay, I love that for you. As you know, I love this for me too. The replay is an amazing resource. It is available immediately, 24 hours after, not immediately, pretty close to immediate, but 24 hours after we go live. So we're also bringing in guests and visitors from YouTube Live. So welcome, welcome, welcome if you're joining me on YouTube Live. I love that for you. We're really building out our YouTube platform. We're excited about the work that's happening over there. You're going to start to see, you probably have already started to see some improvements, some enhancements, some things that are happening there, specifically because that community is additive in a lot of ways. We started this on LinkedIn Live, and now we're adding on the YouTube Live community and the YouTube platform as an additional place where folks can find us. So excited for that, and want to keep that going, want to make sure folks experience that with us. So we took a week off, but the last time that we were together, we were talking about skills-based hiring. And the reason why skills-based hiring is an important discussion is because there is some reality to the ground shifting beneath original ideas we may have around career and around education, all at the same time, where there's a discussion in education and educational environments of how do we make sure in higher education and institutions, how are we making sure that it's worth it, right? For people to come to these institutions, make this investment, sometimes take on debt as a result of this investment. How do we make sure we continue to add value? So it's kind of like, in my mind, we're seeing this negotiation between the public sector, private sector, employers, and versus educational institutions. And it's kind of a power dynamic shift and realignment real time. So when I think about it that way, it's a part of a process where there's this dance where institutions or colleges, higher educational institutions are supposed to be producing a product so that that product then is available for hiring, right? When we think about the purpose that I certainly bought into when I went into higher education, that was it. You went to college so that you could be taught a certain thing to think in a way, a manner of thinking, so that you could go and get a job. You can be employable, you can start a business, you can support yourself. But that was really the goal of going to college way, 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 way back in the early 2000s, right? So I talked kind of about companies now, and I gave some names of organizations who are making a significant shift in the way that they're seeing hiring. But I also did some additional research that I wanted to bring to you guys today. According to Indeed, which is a hiring platform or a job board platform, only about 50% of the postings over the course of the last 6 months have required a higher education component. So when you think about that, according to that study from Indeed, and that came out in April, I believe, of this year, that when you think about job postings making a significant shift around requirements for education, and Indeed being an aggregator of all of these different job postings and having this data, it does send a clear signal that education is going to evolve. What education looks like is going to evolve. Certainly, if you're in the job market, thinking about your qualifications, your capabilities is a new way of thinking versus, do I have the degree in education? So we're going to talk about skills-based hiring. We're going to talk about degrees versus skills. So we're going to try to make it as clean and as clear as possible. So if you have a young person who is considering going into higher education, right, on the decision making, I'm graduating high school, or I am, in 11th grade, and I'm trying to decide what higher education path I should take, this is for you. If you're currently in the job market real time and you're trying to make a decision as to whether or not going back to school to get additional education is the right investment, this is for you. If you're currently in the job market and you're trying to decide what's the best way for me to pivot or shift or transform my own career so that I can thrive in another part or another sector, and I need to decide what skills or competencies that I need to have in order to do that, this is for you. So there's a lot of people who are going to be directly impacted by this, and I want to try to make it as plain as possible. So now we're seeing companies using skill-based job descriptions. So it's less about a title, and it's more about what skills and competencies you can bring to the table. So we're seeing that happen. But I want to go backwards, right? I want to go backwards a little bit because it reminds me of, if you're thinking about the type of learners or the type of people who have spent lots of time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears to get an education or to advance their education, it can absolutely feel like the goalpost is being moved. And I want to just spend a little bit of time talking about what that feeling may indicate for you. And I can tell you what it indicates for me. And I've had lots of clients where we've been talking about this over the course of the last year, because I've seen this shift kind of as an early indicator as somebody who spent a lot of time working in technology, that you started to see the discussions of what competencies were necessary shifting maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. Now it's starting to become mainstream. We're collecting data on the topic, but I say all that to say, oftentimes when there is tremendous amount of shifts in the economy, in the job market, in the talent availability, then you will see employers begin to adjust the way that they hire. We saw this in 2021, and when we're navigating post-pandemic, and then there's this great resignation, people are leaving jobs to get new opportunities, and they're getting 20%, 30% increases. That was because the job market had shifted and employers were outright bringing on tremendous amounts of talent. They were paying for talent in a way that was over and above what people were making compensation wise. There were specific skills that they were going and basically aggressively attracting and bringing on new talent. So because of the availability of jobs and availability of budgets that those companies had, they were able to make that choice, which significantly shifted the job market. Now here we are in what I feel like is a bit of a correction to what we saw in 2020 or 2021. And that correction can arguably be, the argument can be made that it was manufactured. That first kind of job surge was manufactured, and now this correction is manufactured, right? It's not necessarily critically important for this change to be made right now, but it definitely speaks to a trend that we're seeing away from a more traditional, very academic-based assessment of whether someone is capable to do a job and focus more on skills. So if you're having feelings of like, how can you make this change? Why is now the time that this is changing? Once I've attained my degree, or once I'm in graduate school, or once I'm fill in the blank, I understand your feelings. I really do understand your feelings, because it can feel very frustrating, especially because folks have taken on tremendous amount of debt, student loan debt, in order to get these degrees, in order to get this additional education. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, conveniently, we don't need that degree as much. It's not as important. It's not as relevant in our industry. And it can feel like a bit of a punch in the gut. Or it could feel like you overinvested in an area that's no longer relevant and you're left holding the bag while the goalpost gets moved. That's a very real feeling that is worth acknowledging. And I want you to do that. And you're not going to hear that from your manager, right? You're not going to hear that inside of your organization. You're certainly not going to hear that from your HR professionals, but that's why you're here, right? That's why you're following. That's why you're a part of this Career Journey for the Journey community, because you want to hear the truth about what's happening in your field, in your industry. And it has to be agnostic of the company that you work for now. It has to be the truth of what the economics, what the job market looks like. And that's what I'm really offering here to bring. So what we're seeing is, okay, the shifts are real. Degrees are no longer king. Job postings are now moving away. More than 50% of job posting at major companies no longer list 4-year degrees as educational requirements. So we have that. Those are just the facts. That's what we know to be true. So companies are now using skill assessments. So they're using assessments that are here to validate you have certain competencies that then can be applied directly to the job or to the role that they're looking for you to fill. So if you come across some kind of an assessment as you're applying for jobs, know that the trend is moving in that direction. Or if you haven't come across it yet, but you're thinking about it in the future, know that the trend, that skills assessment, is on the horizon potentially. So you could still have the education requirement for a period of time. You could still have the application requirements or all the referrals, and there may be a skills assessment that's getting added on top of it. And then they're talking about valuing micro credentials. So this is a term that is emerging, but this idea of micro credentials, where it's not a 4-year degree, but you may take a course, you may do a boot camp, you may do a learning on a virtual platform. And now you have additional skills that you're able to say that you've acquired. And you'll start to see this even on social media, where people are posting these micro credentials. And, I've just recently acquired this certification, or I recently finished this 6-month program, or I recently, graduated from this nonprofit organization, which is doing development training. you're starting to see these micro credentials be posted and be celebrated, and certainly be leveraged. So if you're thinking about, should I join some of these platforms? And I would love to partner with some of the platforms, because I think the discussion has to be had. Who is the audience? And as we think about the audience growing, bringing on really thoughtful consideration to people who are currently in the job market and what the path could be for them if you navigate something like a LinkedIn Learning, or you navigate something like a boot camp, given by Google, or you navigate something like a Coursera certification. All of those varieties, all of those are partnership opportunities as I see it. So I'm kind of speaking to the ability to be able to manifest those partnerships. But I do believe that understanding the job market now and seeing this trend of micro credentials moving in that direction is something that you have to be aware of, right? So I want to pause here for a moment, because the feelings of, the goalpost is being moved is real. And I want us to be able to work through those feelings and those perceptions, because it's true. But I don't want you to work through it so long that you are frustrated that you let an opportunity to step into a new phase of your own development, you let it pass by you because of the frustration or the resentment or the disappointment. It's kind of one of those, now the game has changed. We have to think about the game in a different way. And sometimes when you are a free agent, and I encourage all of us to be free agents in our career, free agents that we're not tied to any one organization, we're tied to any one way of being or one way of existing. We are, capable of evolving. We are absolutely capable of being agile and being responsive, because that's just what the world requires of us. If you're in a place where you're not ready to do it, I get that. It doesn't mean that it won't have to get done. So it's about you choosing, when are you willing to make the choice? So as we think about this, moving to a micro-credential can really level the playing field for a lot of people. So for some folks who have already made the investment in education, it may feel like this is creating friction that's unnecessary. For some folks who didn't have access to higher levels of education for any variety of reasons, be it race, class, socioeconomics, because we know those things are very real when we think about the United States of America, it can really level the playing field. It gives those folks an opportunity to now compete for high paying or compete for jobs that they would have not been able to access before. So there's always a both and when we think about these kinds of changes in industry. So if you've been kind of learning or training yourself to do things in the background, and you've been, navigating boot camps and kind of testing out the waters of these new ways of learning, these micro credentials, then this is going to be a great opportunity for you. And if you've not, you can still start today. If you have not, you can still start today. There's several institutions online that are offering all kinds of programming. Some of those institutions are zero cost, some of them are low cost, some of them are everything in between. Everything in between, a real higher education model. But I'm here to tell you, it's not too late for you to think about what are the new skills that you need to add in order to remain competitive in this market. And it kind of encourages an always learning model. Always learning requires you to have the capacity to learn as well as do your job, which for some folks, that's not a reality. But I want to encourage you to think about always learning is the way of the future. There is no, I got a skill, I have a competency, this is all I do, I'll be able to do this for the next 10, 20 years. It's just not a realistic way to think about your career anymore. So I want to make sure that you have the tools to reevaluate what's going to be necessary for you to upskill, for you to navigate the next phase of your career so that you can thrive. So I want to talk about, how do you think about your skill building in your examples that you're sharing when you're thinking about building your resume, you're thinking about interviewing, you're thinking about networking, relationship building, right? We're just coming off of a series on networking. And do we really hate networking, or have you not figured out how to talk about yourself? I mean, it was a dope series. I learned a lot through it. Go back and watch it if you didn't join us live for that. It was an amazing, very eye-opening series, because there was a lot of feedback around what the hardships or hindrances were for people who were trying to network and build a relationship. So Examples of how do we think about storytelling about our value and our skills as opposed to listing what we've done, listing tasks that we've done. Now, this dialogue has been happening a lot around resumes for a long time, that storytelling is going to be more necessary, elaborating on the skills and competencies you have as opposed to the title or as opposed to the list of things that you've done. So I want to give a quick example, and I'm reading here from a script. So instead of saying manage projects, manage a team, you may say something like led a cross-functional team of 6 or more people for a 12-week project deadline that delivered on time and on budget. There are more words there. There's more descriptors there. There's more highlight that you can share about not only what happened, but what your active role was in getting to the result. So because that's a result and a skill, is more memorable, is more impactful, it's going to allow you the opportunity to illuminate what you bring to the table from a skill standpoint. And these are skills you already have, but may not be telling the right stories for. So it's kind of a two-part idea. One is if there are new skills that you feel like you need to develop in order to be competitive in this job market, and there are lots of them, where are you going to get them from? How are you going to invest your time and energy in upskilling? And we would love to partner with you there. And there's this other idea of what skills and competencies do I already have, but I'm not telling the right story for. Because if you can tell the right story about your competencies, about what you bring to the table, about your unique abilities and your value proposition, that allows you to be more competitive than folks who are not telling that story. So don't just write your job description, write your impact. Don't just tell your job description, tell your impact. And that goes back to when you're networking and relationship building. Let's talk about the story behind it, give it some breath, give folks a reason to be more interested in what you do and what you bring to the table. So if you're still using the same resume or the same talking points from 2019 or earlier, or even 2020, it's time for a revamp. It's time for a revamp because the job market has shifted. The requirements for employers has shifted. So our job is to be agile and to respond to the market. And in doing that, making the adjustment so that we can be great competitors in the market as it exists today. When the game changes, we're going to adjust to the game and rise to the occasion, because that's what it takes to remain competitive. So if there are examples and skills that you are not talking about, and I'm not sure if there's something is itching my nose, so I'm struggling to stay focused. If there are skills that you haven't talked about because they're in a volunteer capacity or they're in a board leading capacity, or there's something that you're just doing that doesn't require or not aligned to your job description, that storytelling is important also. And I think mining your life outside of your job description, and I say mining like actually digging for, looking for, searching for opportunities or skills that are going to be valuable in this market, and highlighting those in your resume, highlighting those in your job search experience, will be a big difference maker. So here's what I want you to remember. I'm going to close with this. Your degree, likely, if you are someone who pursued higher education, your degree absolutely opened the door for opportunities for you. There's many of us who can absolutely say we would have not been able to attain certain parts of organizations or join certain companies without having a degree. So I don't think that it was a bad investment. However, your skills are going to keep you in the job market and get you new opportunities as you go forward. And we will rely on the degree less. Your skills got you your degree got you the opportunity. Your skills and competencies are what will keep you in the room and allow you to aspire for more inside of an organization. So thinking about micro credentials, thinking about storytelling tied to your skills and capability that you've developed will only make you a more desirable candidate in the future. So I want you to start building that repertoire, building that story warehouse of how you have talked about your impact and what value you've been able to bring to the organization, rather than the tasks or activities you've done. And if you're thinking, okay, I hear it. I hear what you're saying, Leah. I want to figure out the way to start this process. Let's work together to do it. I think oftentimes we have to navigate these processes not having all of the support systems in place. And that's where the fear and trepidation and discomfort comes from. And I'm telling you that I'm here because I specifically want to support folks making this transition successfully. Because I don't believe that there has to be friction in this process. It's an evolution that was inevitable. So I really want us to spend more time working together and working in community on these things, whether it's masterminds, whether it's group collaborations, whether it's career gems for the journey, small group sessions where we're able to come together on Zoom calls, or whether we're able to come together in person, just like we talked about for the Career and Care Summit. There's an opportunity for us to collaborate on this and for us to be able to work together to remove the friction that you might be feeling as this shift continues. Because employers are talking differently to us. Companies are talking differently to us as the job market. So we need to respond differently. So as we think about skills-based competencies or skills-based hiring practices versus what we know, the degree-based hiring and where we're moving to, there's a good conversation that needs to be had. And we're just scratching the surface and getting started on that conversation. So I appreciate you for riding with us. I appreciate you for thinking that this is the place that you want to spend your time and to be able to invest time and energy. And I continue to do all of the work in the background to make sure that you feel like this is a valuable use of your time and that there are real gems that you can then apply to your journey. So until the next time we're together, next Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern time, I would absolutely encourage you to make your journey work for you. And if there is a time for us to be able to be back together, it is 12 p.m. Tuesday Eastern Standard Time. Or you can head over to our YouTube channel and find all of the previous lives that we worked on over the course of 2025. So I will see you next time, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.